to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I didn't even notice.
Okay, so happy to welcome everyone to the June meeting of the Union Township Planning Commission. We've had Pledge of Allegiance. Roll call, please.
McDonald here. Bradshaw is excused. Hayes.
Here.
Lapp.
Here?
Squadrito.
Here.
Shingles.
Here.
Tom Olver, we haven't heard from. Brown.
Here.
Daring.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay.
And there's Olver.
He's here. In a
We
pinch.
We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Next item is approval of tonight's agenda. You have your agenda in front of you. There are 2 new business items and 1 old business item carried over from last month. Are there any other items that people are aware of that need to be on tonight's agenda? Are there any concerns with tonight's agenda?
Move to accept the agenda.
Support.
Okay, there was a motion by Shingles with a second by Thering to approve tonight's agenda as prepared. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so our agenda is approved. We'll go ahead and go through it. Next item is approval of the minutes. This is from our last regular meeting on May 20th. Are there any corrections to the May 20th minutes? Tara made a minor, just kind of typographical correction on the second page at the top. If not, we can have a motion to approve those.
So moved.
Support.
Who was the so moved? I was looking down.
Tom.
Okay. So motion by Olver with the second by Hayes to approve the minutes as prepared. Any further discussion? Not all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so minutes are approved. Next item is correspondence, board reports, presentations. We'll take them in the usual order. First item is Commissioner Thering, updates from Board of Trustees.
Thank you. We had, well, I don't have my exact dates because I think I started writing things out based on the date and then I just started writing and I forgot what date went with what. But we had 2 presentations, one from Katie Mora she's the president of the Middle Michigan Development Corporation, kind of going over there's a nice magazine. I meant to bring that. There's so much information in that it's too much to share. I was going to let you have that, but apparently I didn't bring it with me. And that's I will get that and bring that. It was a nice presentation. You can definitely catch it. It's either on our May 28th or our June 11th meeting. We also had a presentation from Allie Barnes from Yo and Yo on the 2024 financial audit, and the township did very well. There was no huge deficiencies that were found. There's always a little tweak here and there to improve, but nothing that was alarming. So that was good. We had a citizen come forward to talk about 2 things. One was maybe some bike paths along Lincoln, or I think we have some sidewalk starting to happen. But the big thing that she talked about was Lincoln Road at the corner of 20 and Lincoln, about having a turn lane. because the lanes are offset on Lincoln Road, when you go to turn, typically you can't move unless everybody's out of the way. It's just too dangerous. We've had some discussions about that, maybe here, and I know we've definitely had some discussions in our Board of Trustees meetings. I believe the overall consensus at the end of our meeting, our last meeting, was to maybe send a letter to MDOT just inquiring about that, not necessarily a turn light, but possibly something I think is being put together on that, I believe. Just asking, what, I think things will change when the other side of the road, I believe it's the other side of the road, still has some work yet to be done. But I believe there's some easements from sidewalks and maybe some other things that are kind of holding us back from finishing that project. So my guess is when that's completed, things would maybe line up a little bit better. I don't know. But the board asked to just have some correspondence with MDOT just to see what their thoughts were on that, more or less. And outside of that, so I appreciate that citizen coming forward and talking about that, because it helps to hear. Outside of that, I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Commissioner Thering on trustee-related matters from commissioners? Not, we thank you for your report. Look forward to next month. Let's see. Next item is Commissioner McDonald, updates from ZBA. I don't believe they've met, but I'll...
Nothing to report, no meeting.
Okay. And next item is the Community and Economic Development Monthly Report. Again, this is always in your packet. It is a thorough report of what the township office has done, what's happening with all the boards, other sorts of things. And we always pause to give commissioners an opportunity to ask questions if they have any on anything they might have seen in the monthly report.
So I've just had a lot of people come to me and talk to me about the situation on page 3 at the top, and I don't even know, because it's a zoning situation, but I think I don't know, maybe some other people have heard about it too, and I'm kind of surprised they're not here tonight to talk about it, but is barn dominium something that we need to start talking about in a little bit more detail? Because it seems like it's kind of a new development there's a lot of interest in, and that maybe there's some vague language here and there in our statutes and so I'm just wondering if that's something we should talk about in the future.
Well, barndominium is, you might say, is a nickname, really. It's for a style of residential home construction that looks like somewhat like a pole barn, some more like a pole barn than others. Some people view this as construction only using pole building design, that type of foundation, but in reality it's just kind of an architectural character, you might say, looking somewhat like an agricultural building. We don't have vague standards. We simply have a minimum standard. We have a section that's in our ordinance. It was in our version of it was in our 1991 ordinance. It's a section that is in almost every zoning ordinance in Michigan. Ours is called Residential Design Requirements. It goes in a number of different names, but it basically includes a statement that essentially all single-family homes, no matter what the style of construction, that are on an individual lot, have required to have a minimum residential character, essentially. There's some language in there that talks about that this is not about architectural style. We're not saying thou shalt only do mid-century modern, or thou should only do Bavarian, as Frankenmuth does in their historic district. Thou shalt only build Bavarian. We don't. That's not what this is. It's simply that that design cues, visual character cues related to the exterior of the building, ultimately need to have a minimum residential character to it. It is truly a judgment call of our zoning administrator when a project comes in. There are a variety of ways to meet the requirement. We've had a number of these projects come in. They've all, I think now all been approved, haven't we? We had this one that this is referencing that had to go through a second effort, but as I said, there are a multitude of ways to get to that point. Simply it being similar in character to residential dwellings in the area. I think the ordinance uses the term neighborhood. And since many of these buildings are put in the rural area of the township, the zoning administrators define neighborhood as basically within a mile. So pretty broad brush for that. This one, this particular project, as I said, did have some challenges in that the initial plan simply didn't meet the requirements. And they did ultimately submit a revised plan, and they were approved. So the building permit's been issued for it.
Right, so I just want to, maybe I'll catch everyone up real quick. So I did all that research. I looked at section 6.16 so I could make sure I understood what it was said. I obviously know what a barn dominium is. And then I realized that the discretion is up to the employee of the township, and that it should, match or be similar in character to the houses and residential buildings around it. So I then went on Google Earth and kind of did my own little research all around, which is pretty neat. You don't have to go driving around anymore. And I also read the letter from township staff to the person seeking the permits, and there were just some alarming situations in there. And I think I'm probably not the only one that you've heard from about this. So, for example, there was like a request. I wish I had it with me, for there to be. I want to make sure I use the right word, but I think it was grills on the windows or something.
It was not a request. If I may, I apologize for interrupting.
No, that's fine.
Because
I want more information.
Heard this already. There was not a request for anything. There was discussion that happened before the gentleman's building permit was applied for, and certainly we can make this a discussion if there's a desire to go through this further, but I'll give you a quick summary. There was discussion before the building permit was applied for. There was, during discussions between the applicant ultimately and the zoning administrator, looking at how do we get where we need to go. The applicant suggested several things. That the letter that you're talking about, which was what she's talking about is a denial letter, which is what we provide when we deny a permit. Provide a letter, here's the denial, here's why, here's what you can do about it, including going to the zoning board of appeals. Anyway, so in this case, the applicant had suggested some things, and in fact, had some indication that they were going to head down the direction of putting these elements into the plan. They ultimately did not do that. The letter simply stated, if you did put those things you brought forth into the plan would be approved. That would be more enough to meet the requirement. That's all that was saying. It was not demanding anything, was not requesting anything. It was simply saying, the things you suggested would be sufficient. You just simply didn't put them in the plan that you submitted. As I said, though, there are many ways. These projects, barn dominium style projects, essentially require the assistance of an architect because of the type of foundation and the calculations and such that are needed for that type of foundation. And architects have a whole toolbox full of design tools, design cues that can be used for this kind of project. And so our first recommendation is simply talk to the architect, share in this case, share the letter because they have that information, but simply share the section of the ordinance and invite that architect to pull out their toolbox and do some tweaking to the design. Ultimately, essentially what happened, the design was tweaked, project was approved, and its building permit's been issued.
Right, so I just want to let everyone know, the only reason I brought this up, because it is essentially a zoning situation, and I wasn't even sure I was going to, but then I saw it in the report, and we can talk about those things. So like I said, not just the people seeking the permits, but several other people knowing that I hold this position had questions about it, and there has been a lot of, I guess maybe not a lot of, but there has been in the past few months discussion about overreach from some of the employees at the township, and we've seen it on social media, and it's just kind of a concern of mine that it's something we should keep an eye on, because when there's people that feel like the discretion, something that's up to the discretion of an employee of the township, it's kind of giving a, it's giving a negative light to the township, in that we're, like we've had other commissioners talk about before, that we're making it difficult for people to build or succeed with their plans and their things that they want to do in the township. So that's why I brought it up, and I just think it's something that everyone should be aware of, and I probably wouldn't have unless several people hadn't come to me with concerns about it. So that's just the reason. And if we want to talk about it more, we can, or if you want to look into that statute yourself, or section 6.16, and maybe we can talk about it later, but that was the only reason I wanted to mention it. So I appreciate the information you gave me also. Thank you, Rodney.
And thank you for giving me the opportunity to visualize a Bavarian barn dominium. Still working on that one.
You never
right,
know, it could be any minute that someone will come up with that next.
Are there other questions on the monthly report? Okay, well, I appreciate the informative exchange there. If not, then we'll go ahead and move on. Are there any other reports, presentations, correspondence, anything else that commissioners or staff have that we need to be aware of that would fall under this category? All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on. So we've reached the first public comment of the meeting. We always have 2 public comments in our meetings, separate from any public hearings, which we don't have tonight, but the first public comment is restricted to items that are not on tonight's agenda. So if there's anyone either present or online who wants to address the Planning Commission on any item that is not on tonight's agenda, they're welcome to do so at this time. If you're in the room, come to the podium, give us your name and address for the minutes. If you're online, make your presence known, and we'll make sure that you can speak. And we ask you to limit your comments to 3 minutes. Public comment, the first public comment is open at 7:17.
No one's online.
Okay, we don't have anybody in our online boardroom, and folks in the audience are presumably here for other purposes. They're not coming forward, so we'll assume that there's no public comments at this stage of the meeting, so we'll go ahead and close that. Also at 7:17, we'll have an extended public comment towards the end of the meeting. So we're ready to move on to new business. The first item is a final site plan review, P-Final SPR 25-02 for the Thrive Community Church on Bud Street at South Isabella Road. And we'll hear from Rodney, and then we'll hear from the applicant, and then we'll do our action.
Well, thank you. Everybody should have a copy of our report. It's dated June the 10th. This is a final site plan item. Recall, we did adopt an amendment last year that allows some final site plan items to be administratively approved. This one has 2 items on it that require a planning commission judgment call, so that's why it's going to be reported tonight. The plan is for the new Thrive Community Church. Overall, we found the plans to be in very good order. I said there were 2 items that require your action. One is on the bottom of page 2 of our report, page 42 of the packet. We note the applicants requested temporary relief from sidewalk construction for a portion of the sidewalk that would be located along South Isabella Road, that shorter frontage of the property. The section that they're asking for relief on would have been located within a state-regulated wetland. So that's the reason for the request. If we note in the report, we don't have an objection. We find that that's consistent with our policy for temporary relief. And so if your action to approve if you choose to approve the final site plan with this request, that would be granting that relief. They will provide an easement, and that's also noted at the top of page 3 of our report. They will be providing an easement for that sidewalk, even that section through there. So if in the future the township decides to make that connection, we can do that. It would most likely require a boardwalk go through that wetland area. The second item for your attention is on the middle of page 3, on page 43 of the packet, under the number 7, which is the landscaping section. And this is a proposed landscaping modification. We have ordinance requirements for landscaping related to the loading area. There's a loading area in front of the building there, and also related to simply the street frontage. And there are certain requirements for how that landscaping is done. But in this particular case, we also have the circumstance where we have the parking row that's directly facing towards the houses across the north side of Bud Street. And so it was important to ensure we have best possible screening for headlight glare from those cars. And so the applicant did provide a berm, but because of the fairly limited space, the berm could only be a certain height, about 2 feet high. And so they have proposed to adjust some of the shrub plantings to create essentially a solid hedgerow of shrubs along the top of that berm. And then they're also relocating the trees that are required, the kind of green belt of trees that are required along that frontage. They're off the berm, so now they're on the downslope of the berm to accommodate putting that hedgerow of shrubs up on top. That will provide the kind of height that's needed to screen that headlight glare. So it is considered a modification from what our ordinance would otherwise require, but it is a very effective modification for what's needed for this particular site. So staff, our perspective is this is a very good change. And so if you approve the final site plan with the request for the modification, you're approving this alternative design. The other two items on our list are related to the outside agency reviews. These are really housekeeping items. In your packet on page 40, you have a copy of the review letter dated June 3rd from our Public Services Director. This is simply noting some details that need to be added to the final site plan set, some utility-related details. None of them affect in any way the site design, layout, and these are truly hot details. So normally we would want these to be addressed. We would want all the outside agencies to be fully addressed before the final site plan comes to you. This is one where we felt, looking at it and having a conversation with the Public Services Director, that we could bring this one to you and address it as a recommended condition of approval, just so that these things are provided before the project goes forward in the building. And we understand, as we note in our report, that Mr. Beebe, the engineer, is already working on resolving those details. The other item is stormwater management. Our stormwater management ordinance requires a recorded stormwater management plan that can be recorded on the property. So another housekeeping item is we'll need a copy of that as recorded document prior to issuance of the building. So with that in mind, we are pleased to recommend this project to you for approval, subject to a couple of conditions. Basically, to receive copies of the sidewalk easement and stormwater management plan as recorded in the Register of Deeds office, and then also to receive the updated site plan sheets with the details that the Public Services Department needs. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions.
Any immediate questions for Rodney?
I'd like to start off with section 14.2p, just talking about the final site plans for wetland and protected area there and how it's going to conform. I know that was something that was a concern for me, kind of why I voted to push this back last time. And I wanted to just know, I can see that the Eagle permit was secured, but do we have results of what the drain water situation is going to be like from there on these updated plans? I know that was a concern from another neighboring business that was there, talking about consistent flooding that they have, and got assurances from them on the original plan that this was going to drain out to the road. There would be no issues with that, and Eagle was going to check through to make sure that was okay. I just didn't know if we could get some more clarity on just what the results of those were and any assurances we can get, maybe for myself, just that we're not gonna be putting in something that's gonna be a burden to any of their neighbors or the surrounding wetlands in there.
I tell you what, Mr. Beebe is here. He is an expert in that area, and I'm pleased to defer to him. Before I do, though, I want to take from that question, are there any other questions for me? And then I'll sit down and let Mr. Beebe come up.
Okay, I don't see any at this time, so thank you. So we'll go ahead and turn it over to the applicant here.
Good evening, my name's Tim Beebe. I'm with Central Michigan Surveying Development here on behalf of Thrive Church. My address is 2257 East Broomfield Road here in Union Township. Let me handle your questions first. As far as an Eagle permit, there is no Eagle permit because we are staying out of the wetlands. We are not touching the wetlands. So you do not have to apply for a permit if you have your wetlands delineated by an approved consultant from Eagle. Ours happens to be a PhD that teaches the classes at Michigan State that the Eagle people take. So I like using him because there's usually never any controversy on what the boundary is. So there would be no Eagle permitting. We're staying out of that wetland boundary. It's shown on our drawings. Not only do we keep our development actions out of that, but we also protect it with silt fence that's 2 feet outside of the wetland boundary, and that's put in before any construction can start. As far as the drainage, all drainage on the site, all improved surfaces come interior. So therefore, we aren't spilling any water off any hard surfaces out onto areas that are not being collected.
It's all gonna be underground collection then pumped out.
It goes into a storm sewer system which comes down to the south edge of the property. It runs to the west, and we have a very large detention area that's shown on the plans that is in the southwest corner. That detention area not only holds the required 25-year storm, but it holds the 100-year storm for the site.
I remember going over the reviews on that last time. You guys had put in a very large storm retainer in there in the case of that, which is great planning.
I have to be careful what I say as far as lowering water tables, but there isn't going to be an increase in any water table based on the development of this. Whenever you put a detention basin in that is completely drained, has an outlet that can completely drain it, typically the groundwater around the area goes down. I'm not going to guarantee that up on another property that their groundwater is going to go down. Eagle likes to see us not impact those because it impacts wetlands. So that's why we were draining everything to the south and taking it over and trying to get our detention basin as far away from the wetland areas as we could on the site. So also helps that's where our outlet is. So does that answer your questions?
Yes, I appreciate the clarity on that.
Okay. Rodney went through, did a review from A to Z on his report, so I'm not going to bother you with another review of the same thing. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, questions for Mr. Beebe? Okay, so you've heard from Township staff, you've heard from the applicant, and so it is with us now. So this is our deliberation and ultimately action. So it's open for discussion, comment, concerns from commissioners. And just to remind you, the two specific actions that were mentioned that we need to take into account are the request for temporary relief for the piece of sidewalk that would go through the wetland and that is on Isabella. And then secondly, the modification to the landscaping on the berm.
You're saying that to comply with the future pathway there might require a raised path?
Right, going through a wetland area, we could fill the wetland. There's simply not enough space to put a sidewalk in on an area that's outside the wetland boundary, that's not in the road itself. So we would either have to fill the wetland, and then we're dealing with issues of mitigating the wetland somewhere else by adding, and that would require an eco permit to alter that wetland, or build a boardwalk that would go over the wetland. Even that would, I suspect, would probably still require a state permit, but it's much less of an impact on the wetland. It's let's call it the very expensive way to build a pathway. But it's something that right now it's not on our radar to do. It's something that as our network of pedestrian paths and bicycle paths continues to build out, it's something we may consider doing in the future. There are certainly many communities have done that sort of thing to get across difficult areas.
Just wondering what the cost would be accrued by the township down the line, if as that community continues to grow, it becomes necessary.
So this one, it's interesting. So this is temporary relief from sidewalk construction, or ordinance can allow us to call in that in the future. There is a reasonableness factor that comes into play. It's not anything in our ordinance, but it's certainly something that we have to consider. That is what we're asking for reasonable. Is it? You might say, is it reasonably proportional to the benefit and to the cost to the developer, in this case the church, to actually put together this project through a state regulated wetland, whether it's a boardwalk or filling and mitigating the wetland, is a very high cost, and it would probably, if we had to defend it, it would probably be difficult to defend as a reasonable request of the church to do in the future. However, it is certainly something as a public amenity that the township can do if the board of trustees chooses to at some point down the road.
This exemption would just continue in perpetuity, or would we have to review this every year?
Now, the temporary relief decisions stand until they're called in. We had a few that were called in back 2021, something like that, I think, 22. But it was at that time it was because some other sidewalk pieces had been put in. So otherwise it stands as it is until a decision made to change it at this level.
Thank you, Matt.
Other comments on the sidewalk issue from commissioners? Or the landscaping issue?
I don't have a comment on the landscaping issue, but I don't know if we addressed the number. I don't know that it has a number. I guess number 9, but it's on page 4 where it says can conform. Was that addressed with the talk about the storm drainage, or is this something different?
Number 9. This is the outside agency. Yeah, these are they're actually addressed in the recommended conditions for approval. These are those housekeeping items that we talked about. The first one being the need for an as-recorded copy of the stormwater management plans, maintenance plans, and then also having the updated Public Services Department detail sheets added to the site plan.
Okay.
So those, if you look in both in the recommendation and then if you look in the draft set of motions on page 45, you'll see a draft motion site. You'll see two conditions there in the middle, and those cover the items that we talked about.
Okay, thank you.
I think it'd be a good idea to amend the hedges there so that people driving past aren't getting blinded. Anything like that to cover up. The removal, I think the shrubs in order to cost for to cover for glare. It was covering for glare and stuff, right?
Right,
Yeah.
for the headlight glare.
Do we need to, as a board, verbally approve the change to landscaping and the sidewalk easement, or are those assumed if we approve the site plan?
Because they have put the request right on the plan, if you approve the
Okay.
plan, you are approving those changes.
Okay.
Good question.
I think under draft motion, it's a second draft motion, also to approve with final site plan conditions.
Right, but those conditions aren't actually, those are on the site plan already. These are other ones.
I see.
Well, I move to approve PFI NAL 25-02 final site plan dated June 2nd, 2025 for the new 26,356 square foot Thrive Community Church facility located on the northeast corner of South Isabella Road and Bud Street, PID 14-012-30-009-00 in the southwest quarter of Section 22 and in the B7 Retail and Highway Business zoning district, finding that the site plan can comply with the applicable zoning ordinance requirements for final site plan approval, including sections 14.2.p required site plan information and 14.2.s standards for site plan approval, subject to the following conditions. The applicant shall provide the zoning administrator copies of the as-recorded sidewalk easements and stormwater maintenance agreement prior to issuance of building permits. And 2, zoning administrator acceptance of updated site plan sheets with the additional details as requested by the Public Services Department prior to issue of building permits.
Support?
Okay, so the motion was made by Lapp and it was seconded by Olver. Discussion. Okay, hearing none, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Waring,
Yes.
McDonald,
Yes.
Quadrino,
Yes.
Brown,
Abstain?
Shingles,
Yes.
Lamb,
Yes.
Over,
Yes.
and Hayes.
Yes.
All right, motion carries.
Okay, thank you. So this one is approved.
Good luck.
Thank you. We're gonna avoid the Bavarian theme.
I admit to having abused Frankenmuth in my conversations with Barney, because it has been my go-to example, because they actually do require it in their
All right. So we'll move on to our second new business item. This is a preliminary site plan review, PRES PR 25-01 for the proposed Mid-Michigan College Event Center at 2600 South Somerton Road. Once again, we'll hear from Rodney first, then the applicant, then we will do our work.
You should have a report dated June the 11th. This is, look on the site plan document, it says final site plan on the title, but this is actually a preliminary site plan review. And we'll talk about why. Reviewing the plan, is dated May 27th. If you recall, this is the project where you did see an earlier version of this plan, February, March, and which we shared with you the challenge we had with the height deficiency, that the proposed event center building was taller than the 35-foot maximum height limit of the Newport Business District. The amendment to allow this building to have a limited height exception did move forward from here. Ultimately, the Board of Trustees did adopt it. It went into effect. And so that item is now addressed. The height hasn't changed in the building, but because of the type of building, it now falls under that limited height exception that allows some additional height as long as the building is pushed further back from the property lines and road rights of way. So the applicant did submit this plan, intending it to be a final site plan. As a note in a report, initially they submitted only the plans. A few days later, they did add the actual application for final site plan approval and paid the fee for it. The challenge we have, though, is that in order for a final site plan to move forward, our process, the outside agency approvals that are involved need to be either in hand, permits or approvals are done, or in the language of the standards for final site plan approval, they are assured of approval, which essentially means that there's some communication that indicates to us that essentially there are only housekeeping details left, kind of like that public services review you saw with the last item, where truly those for housekeeping details don't affect the site design, don't affect the use of the site. So that's the standard for final site plan approvals. Outside agency permits and approvals are either done in hand or assured of approval. In this case, most of the outside agency permits or approvals are in that category. We'll talk a little bit more about those, but the one that is not is our public services department. Although it's a township department, we treat it as an outside agency for the purpose of this process. And so between preliminary and final, all these outside agencies are dealt with. In this case, the challenge is the unallocated capacity of a pump station downstream, sanitary sewer pump station downstream from the site, and the questions related to whether the capacity is available, the unallocated capacity is available to serve the peak use that will be coming from this event center. So we noted that that issue is not resolved yet. We actually have a meeting later this week with the applicant to work on that further and see where it goes. But at this point, that's not resolved. So for that reason, we have pursued this as a preliminary site plan review, and it's included on your agenda only for preliminary site plan approval, despite the title on the plan. In our report, just a few things. The applicant, one of the sheets you'll see in there is there's an analysis of parking needs for the college and for this new event center. The project, the event center, is going in the existing parking lot. It's actually eliminating a number of parking spaces. So the college has done a detailed evaluation of their needs, their use, and provided that information in the packet. It's on the number is sheet number C106. And in that, as part of that, they indicate that the event center, the use of the college and the use of the event center will be coordinated, so that large events of the event center would only take place when the college is not operating in session. So they have provided the information to show that even with a reduction in the number of parking spaces, that they have more than enough to provide for their needs based on this plan, based on this specific usage plan. This is truly a limitation on the use of their property. Of course, the college and the event center, if they had no parking, could operate together. There'd be no issue with that if they had a parking structure or additional spaces to meet the minimum requirements of both. But they are proposing to essentially share the use share the parking and share the use in terms of keeping, when one is intensive, keep the other one lower intensive use. And so this would be a modification to our parking standards. Part of, in addition to landscaping, there's a provision of the parking regulations that allows you to approve an alternative parking standard. And that's essentially what sheet C-106 is an alternative parking standard. From staff perspective, we're comfortable with recommending that we proceed with this. As you noted on that sheet, the college does have additional land available if they need to develop additional parking. They would have to come back to you for a site plan approval to do that, but they do have land available if there is a challenge for parking down the road. Our ordinance also has a mechanism already built into it that if there are issues with parking, if we're seeing people park on road margins or in other places they shouldn't be, we can essentially call in the requirement that they address that. So we're comfortable with recommending that modification as you see it on sheet C-106. That's the main preliminary site plan item. Always in these reports, when applicants provide more than just what's required for the preliminary site plan approval, we do comment on those additional things like landscaping and lighting and such that are really final site plan details. And this is where we just noted some details related to lighting, related to landscaping. They're minor things that easily fix in the final site plan. And then we get to the outside agency approvals. This is on page 4 of our report, page 81 of the packet. The main thing was stormwater management, similar to what we talked about the last one. They will need to provide an as-recorded copy of the maintenance agreement for the stormwater system, both to show that it was recorded on the property and so that the township has a copy of it. In this case, we're asking them to include that note on the final site plan so that, similar to what we just did, if the note's there, we will provide it, and you don't need to make it a condition of approval. So that just simply needs to be added. Here at the bottom of page 4, wrapping over to page 5, you see some additional comments on the stormwater system evaluation, capacity evaluation that's done. I'm certainly happy to answer additional questions about that, but at this point, the bottom line is that item needs to be resolved because it directly ties to the intensity of the land use that can operate on that site. The college, there's capacity right now, the college obviously operates there, and at times at a very high level. The system that's in place addresses that. We're simply asking the applicant to resolve the concerns about the available unallocated capacity on that pump station and the impact on this from this event center during the peak flow. So I'm sure that can be addressed. It's really an engineering question ultimately, and allocation question on their side. But right now, because of that question that's there, we do not have the ability to approve a final site plan. We're saying that land use is ready to connect into our sanitary sewer system, which is, again, part of the final site plan approval essentially is. So with that in mind, we're comfortable with recommending this item for preliminary site plan approval. We don't, at this point, don't recommend any conditions on that because the details really are final site plan details. So the one parking item, again, if you approve the preliminary site plan with that alternative parking statement, you are approving the alternative parking statement. So it does not need to be a separate condition. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Given the scheduled meeting for later in the week and the timeliness, when might we anticipate a final site plan approval?
Well, that's an engineering question more than anything else. I would certainly hope very quickly. There have been some suggestions from the Public Services Department on how to resolve it, and I think that's probably going to be part of the topic of the conversation.
Are those sorts of things housekeeping items that can be handled by staff, or does it have to come back to us again?
In this case, because this is an outside agency permit, essentially, Public Service Department, if they satisfy that and are given that approval, the final site plan could conceivably simply go through, and they meet all the requirements so that Peter can approve it. It could go through administrative approval. Yeah. It just doesn't need to come back.
Other questions for Rodney at the moment?
The modification of the provisions for the parking requirements, would that be similar to the temporary easement of the of sidewalks as we were discussed in like the previous thing, where it would be in perpetuity until we called in that it was interfering with like they did not have enough parking because of, say, future growth?
This one's a little different in that the reason this language is in the parking section is because we can't anticipate the minimum parking needs for every land use. We have in the ordinance we have a long list of land uses and minimum parking standards for those that are based on national standards, but there's really no way to anticipate every single one, and in particular things related to college, this event center, which is both a sports facility and potentially a venue for commencement and other things, a fairly intensive number of people there. That's not one that's really, I mean, there's language in our parking standard for theaters and auditoriums and things like that. It is a percentage of a space per person, essentially, based on the occupancy. But it doesn't do well to have flexibility within that table of land uses for things like this, where you have several things going on the same property, and in particular where you have this kind of idea of when one's operating, the other one's not, essentially. Shared use of the same space, but different operating schedules, that sort of thing. So we did include this ability to propose an alternative parking standard so that the applicant could have the flexibility to say, this works better, and here's why. And they have more than met that requirement. They have provided substantial information. They did substantial research to come up with the information we have there to show that this does work. So we're comfortable that it would remain in place. There's language in our ordinance that essentially if we're seeing violations of our ordinance, basically people parking in the grass, people parking along the road margin on a regular basis repeatedly, that we can call that in and require that they deal with that.
Okay.
So but that would be really like any other ordinance violation.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Rodney while he's standing? Okay. So now we can hear from the applicant if there's anything you'd like to say to us.
Good evening. I'm Aaron Wenzel. I work for Low Professional Services Company. Serve as a project manager for projects throughout the state of Michigan, including the event center, the MC event centers in front of you guys today. I believe the Planning Commission's aware of this project from a high level already, but just want to provide some background where we are to this point. Again, as your staff indicated, we started engaging Union Township over 6 months ago in November of 2024. A pre-application meeting, we sat down in the meeting room back here and went through the project. Then in late January, we applied for preliminary site plan approval, and it came from the Planning Commission 4 weeks later on February 18th, 2025. Overall, I was here. I felt the meeting was positive in nature. We were told overall we met the requirements for preliminary approval, preliminary site plan approval. We had one significant issue in regards to Union Township ordinances, the building height. The Planning Commission, at the recommendation of Township staff, chose not to provide preliminary approval at that time. As you're aware, the Planning Commission chose to make a text amendment to your zoning ordinance with its final adoption on May 14th by the Board of Trustees that did amend that building height situation. After Planning Commission meeting on February 18th, to help streamline the approval process, Mid-Michigan College chose to submit a request for sewer capacity study to Union Township in early March. We finally received the results of that study about 6 weeks later in late April. And we're continuing to work with the utility department regarding the downstream sewer capacity that would service this project. We actually have a meeting scheduled with them tomorrow afternoon to discuss this study further. Also in late April, Rowe, on behalf of the team, submitted the project for outside agency review to meet the requirements for final site plan approval, including 3 paper full-size copies of the plans to the Union Township Utility Department. All the outside agencies except for Union Township Utility Department and Union Township's consulting engineers have approved the development, and we can talk more about those items here later. Union Township Utility Department did provide a letter dated June 3rd, sent to our architect via conventional mail to the project team, indicating that they received a preliminary site plan and provided comments. We are assuming that based on the contents entitled the letter, that the utility department has not provided outside agency review comments yet, a month and a half later. The letter states that the general layout of the water and sewer is approved, but also references the capacity of the sanitary sewer downstream of the project. Late last week, we received the Planning Commission's packet and noticed that the Union Charter Township staff is recommending only preliminary site plan approval to be taken action on. However, the project team would request that the Planning Commission consider approving the preliminary site plan and the final site plan approval with conditions. Adding additional context to our request, the final site plan approval with conditions, I'd like to discuss the items in the preliminary site plan report that are included in your packet. Before getting to the review comments, I'd like to discuss the comments on the site plan application and outside agency approval. One of the comments indicates that no final site plan approval application or fee was submitted at the time of the application. We find that to be incorrect, as all documentation was submitted at one time on May 27th. The township did make us aware that they thought there were deficiencies on May 30th, or on May 27th, but the design team made them aware that the correct documents were in fact submitted and no additional submission was required. No additional correspondence occurred on May 30th, as indicated in the write-up. You may also notice the application for site plan review on page 46 of your packet, dated May 22nd, has both preliminary and final site plan checks. Another discrepancy in the statement, the final site plan approval action was not requested for this application. That's another discrepancy. In our cover letter to the township, it states that we're requesting preliminary and final site plan approval on the June 17th Planning Commission agenda. The plan state final site plan. The application has final site plan checked along with preliminary site plan. In our email providing electronic documents, request final site plan review. I state this to show that we were prepared and concise in our request and intent for final site plan approval during this Planning Commission meeting if the Planning Commission felt it was warranted. Union Township staff feels that this project is warranted for preliminary site plan approval based on the recommendations in your packet. So we would like to move ahead to the look ahead for final site plan approval on page 51 of your packet. We don't disagree that there are a few items that need to be addressed before final site plan approval should be granted, and they will be addressed. However, we are asking for approval of our final site plan and preliminary site plan with the conditions of addressing the items listed. The first item listed is number 8 as a question of the height of the light poles and the location of the light fixture. That is a simple update to the plans to make that information more clear. We do intend to meet the township ordinance. The item labeled number 9 is a question of landscaping around the new building. The only landscaping information not provided is the detailed landscaping immediately adjacent to the building. We have proposed landscaping along the roadway that meets the intent of the landscaping provision of improving the appearance of buildings and parking along the public right-of-ways, and that's been addressed. Adding details about landscaping immediately adjacent to the building is again a simple plan update that can be provided to the township staff for review. We do intend to meet the township ordinance regarding landscaping around the building, with the landscaping being very similar to the existing buildings on the site. The item labeled number 10 discusses outside agency review. The first outside agency listed is stormwater management. We received stormwater management review comments one day after the site plan application was submitted to the township. However, based on conversations between the design team and Union Township's consulting engineers were able to partially address their only recommendations for a water quality device, which is shown on the plan sheet that's included in your packet. We do intend to meet the township ordinance and have fully addressed their recommendations and sent the information back to the consulting engineers for review. The second item under number 10 is the municipal water and sanitary sewage utilities outside agency review. As noted in the report and discussed earlier, the design team is working with the utility department regarding the allocated sanitary capacity issue. Again, we have a meeting scheduled tomorrow afternoon with the utility department to discuss this item further. The last item listed in question is the need for large diameter water leads to the event center. The design team has not received any correspondence regarding this item to date and will address it after receiving the comments from the township. We'll obviously respect the planning commission's request. If you'd like to review our site plan again for the third time, but we are requesting a final site plan approval with conditions from this commission to address the items listed in the looking ahead to final site plan approval section of the report. Granting this request would save the project a minimum of 3 weeks of waiting to be placed on the next applicable planning commission agenda. Hopefully you can agree that the issues that township staff are indicating as reasons final site plan approval should not be granted, items that are minor in nature or we are currently working on with township staff and do not require another review by the planning commission. If you guys have any questions about this submittal or a request for preliminary and final site plan approval with conditions, I can answer them.
Okay, so you've heard from the applicant. Let me, I guess, interject first. Rodney, I thought I heard you say that if the commission were to approve the preliminary site plan, that if these other points were addressed satisfactorily, that you could do a staff approval of the final site plan?
We actually agree with Mr. Wenzel's direction that you don't need to review this plan again. That's why we updated our zoning orders last year to create this opportunity for an administrative approval of a final site plan that meets all the requirements. That doesn't need any planning commission action, modification of something, anything that requires your judgment call. And so, yeah, if the updated plan addresses these details, as Mr. Wenzel said he would, and if the outside agency details are addressed and we receive the updated approvals from those agencies, the plan that is then submitted would go to our zoning administrator first. He would review it. If in his review he finds that all the ordinance requirements are met, everything conforms, per our ordinance, he can simply take an action to approve it administratively. So there is no delay. But there is a significant challenge with approving the final site plan. I respectfully disagree with Mr. Wenzel on this, because your approval of a final site plan in a circumstance where at the moment we do not have clarity that the township sewer system can support that significantly expanded use of that property, especially peak flow from the event center. You would essentially be approving a site plan for a land use that cannot be supported by the infrastructure of the township. That is a big problem, and simply putting a condition on it saying if they can fix it is not really appropriate. It's most appropriate to approve the preliminary site plan, because those engineering details are not required for preliminary site plan approval. They're expected to happen after. Then Mr. Wenzel, Public Service Department, the outside agencies are involved, can address the details, engineering, whatever solution is worked out. When we have those outside agency permits, when we have the updated plan that addresses the items we talked about in our report, Peter can simply review it, and if he finds that it meets all the requirements, approve it, and the project can move forward to a building permit. So that's why preliminary site plan is the appropriate action. The other thing I'll say is that the only item on your agenda tonight is preliminary site plan approval. So it would require you to also amend your agenda to add a final site plan if you were to go down that road.
Okay. So I see the applicant wants to speak, and then commissioners probably have questions, but let me just to wrap up my piece of this. So it's your position, Rodney, that time-wise, and, you know, we're not dealing with what the past has been, but from now forward, time-wise, there would be no difference between following your recommendation and approving the preliminary and letting them sort out these other details versus doing a final approval but with all these conditions.
That is correct, because if you, essentially, I'm sorry, we're going with the short version. Yes, that's correct. There's no reason to clarify.
Okay, but you feel it's bad form or it's not appropriate to do the latter,
Yes, it is not. Number one, it's not on your agenda tonight. And we post our agenda per the Open Meetings Act before the meeting. You can amend the agenda at the table, but this is a pretty big amendment to go from preliminary to final on a project. So typically, if you're amending an agenda, you do it at the beginning of the meeting, but most importantly, we have it on the agenda to begin with. I understand. I don't disagree with Mr. Wenzel's comment that both boxes were checked in the application. That was my error in the report, that I didn't note that. But just because they ask for combined preliminary final does not mean that it has to be considered. It's simply that they can ask. In this case, because that sanitary sewer issue is not addressed, and because that directly goes to the land use, without ensuring that there's adequate allocated capacity for this event center, basically they can't occupy the event center. So there's no reason to approve a final site plan for a building that can't build or occupy. But if you grant the preliminary site plan approval, and then they address those details, the project can simply come back for an administrative site plan, a final site plan approval per our ordinance.
All right. Did you want to speak? And then I want to open this up to the other commissioners, but did you?
Only to say, I feel really good about the fact that.
You probably need.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I can really.
And then
No, we just need to know.
we know you, but remind us who you
sorry.
are.
Matt Miller, from Mid-Michigan College. Address is 2600 South Somerton here in Union Township. Thank you for that reminder. Only to say that it's nice to hear that we wouldn't have to come back for a final site plan. We did not understand that, so that's good, because there is, we've been through this process a while, and we don't want to delay any further than we need to. We've talked a little bit, if people want more information about the sewer stuff, Rodney and I don't know if you're meeting tomorrow or not, but, so Rodney and I know there's a meet tomorrow to talk about that. I think we have very different views on the sewer capacity issue. Union Township engineers have had a report out that I think is very helpful in that, and so we'll talk about a lot tomorrow. If you are comfortable in doing the preliminary site plan approval, I think that's great, and we can move forward final administratively. If you want more of that information, you can certainly open that up, but Aaron and I talked about not needing to do that if you don't think you need more of that information, because that'll be something we'll talk in detail about tomorrow. But that's what I was, so that clarification about the final site plan approval helps a lot. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So let me open this up to the to commissioners. You've heard from staff. You've heard from, did you have any further comments? You've heard from the applicant. Questions for the applicant, questions for township staff, from commissioners. It's all open.
I wouldn't mind starting. So basically, it sounds like because of scheduling, essentially, that had this meeting that's happening tomorrow happened even a couple days earlier, that there could be the possibility of what Rodney said was assurances that it would be granted, versus we are uncertain at this point. Because it sounds like this meeting might be very influential in determining if that's the case. So, in my opinion, I think that, what we were all just discussing with doing the preliminary site plan and then the administrative approval, it doesn't sound like it's going to delay it 3 weeks. At most, it would delay it a day, plus however long it would take to make the changes to the site plan, which is up to the owners.
Okay. Other comments or questions from anybody, any commissioner?
I have a comment, because I guess last question. So it seems like a lot of the discussion here has been talking about spacage. How many spaces do we have? How much usage are we going to be able to accommodate at the college? And it sounds like, from what I'm hearing, we're getting assurances that these facilities will almost be running not concurrently, but in opposite times? Like, is it right now is the plan to, deal with the discrepancy in spaces by only housing things in the auditorium or in that convention center while school's out of session?
Yeah, I think that's a good clarification to make. When Rodney talked, see, I didn't get this, I'm sorry. When Rodney talks about large events, that's what we're talking about. So once a year we hold commencement. We're so excited to be holding commencement in our own place on campus. Right now we hold commencement at Clare High School, and while Clare High School is great, it's not the best look for a college to have a commencement in high school. So once a year we'll be doing that. That capacity, we have about 1,100 to 1,100 people on site for that event. We anticipate that's the largest event we'll ever have all year. To hold that event and any other event that would be 1,100 people, we would not do anything else on campus. Those are Saturday and evenings and all summer stuff where everything's closed. I don't envision where that would happen, but if someone in the community came to us and said, you know what, we've got this thing, we expect 1,100 people showing up for it, we'd like to host it at Mid, we'd be certainly open to that. We'd love that, as long as it's not on a day when we've got other things going on, because that would certainly present some parking issues, having classes going on and 1,100 people in that event center. The parking analysis that's in the site plan, though, talks about events with 200 people. We expect games to be about 250 people that show up to a basketball game. It talks about having a speaker on campus, and maybe it's 300 or 400 people. Those kinds of things, according to the parking analysis, and I did spend a lot of time on that. I actually counted cars for a long time. Our parking analysis shows we're fine with those things. So we're really talking about those large events. And even when you get to 500 people, we want to be careful about what we're doing. But the parking analysis shows, and we feel confident that those are events we'll be able to hold. So the event center will be used during the day, and when college is going on, it's when we get to those larger events where we're really making sure the campus is closed. And anything even a little bit larger, we're making sure we're block off parking and do those kinds of things to make sure we have capacity.
Let's assume things go gangbusters for you guys,
Yeah.
and enrollment's through the roof. Everybody loves a new building that's come in, and you're getting offers to host events at the same time as schools in session. What would be the discrepancy in parking that would be needed versus having a full house? I guess I want to get an idea of, like, because right now we're getting reassurances that won't happen. I don't know if we're getting any, anything like, I don't see it in here, like, in the building plan that you guys are promising never to host events.
I do. It says that explicitly. Yep.
Okay,
that
so
we wouldn't do that.
it's part
And
of
I
the
think that's part
structure
of
of
what
the
Rodney
deal.
feels good about, is that we say that in there explicitly.
Okay,
Yeah.
but that's great to hear.
But to answer your question, I will give you some. I'll just say a couple things that might make you feel better. For one, when we first opened the building, this would have been 2015 or 15, when we opened the Center for Liberal Arts and Business, our last of the 3-story addition that we did, the last of the big additions. We quickly realized that we didn't have enough parking, and so within 6 months, 8 months, something like that, we added a lot that had 200 and some spaces, because we recognized that we're not that type of institution that wants people parking in the grass either. It's just not a good look. It's not good. Not good for anyone. So we've done that in the past to address issues. So I feel good about that. Our campus master plan, which we just updated back in 2023, has spots, as Rodney indicated, has spots in the plan for more additional parking if we think we need it in the future. So I feel comfortable there. And again, I've done a lot of this analysis to feel comfortable with where we're at in the parking situation. And so for those 3 reasons, I feel good with where we're going to be. And I appreciate Rodney's agreement with that too.
I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
When we talk about how you're going to ensure that this happens, you said it's going to be in the plan. Is that going to be by policy that you're not going to have large-scale events and,
Yeah.
So, if you look on page 3 of our report, page 80 of the packet, right down the bottom when we're talking about this, the last sentence there, right after we say township staff has no objection to the alternative parking standard, these use limitations, and page C106 is really a use limitation. It's also not alternative parking standard, but they're saying they're going to limit their use of their facilities.
Mm-hmm.
So these use limitations, if approved as part of the final site plan, would be fully enforceable by the township based on section 14.2.x, which is compliance with an approved site plan. The reason we say that is that the site plan, the State Zoning Act says that an approved site plan essentially becomes part of our ordinance. And we can enforce it just like any other part of our zoning ordinance.
Gotcha.
So whatever's in there, we can enforce. And so that, yes, if there's a problem, we go right to that page.
Gotcha.
And we say, hey,
Makes
you're not
sense.
doing it.
Answers my question. Thank you.
Matt, if you need a ride to the office, I'd be glad to. You can park at my house
Love
and
it.
drop you off.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Yeah, and Stan, to elaborate on that a little bit, I hadn't thought about, so we have policies and procedures around room usage, and we try to be, and I think really are, a good member of the community in that nonprofits can use our conference rooms for free, and so we invite lots of people to the campus to do things, and so we've got policies and procedures around that. Adding something like that, I think, is a really good idea, and I talk about in the parking piece specifically. Not only could it be a certainly policy or procedure sort of thing, but just in practice, the college is not equipped to do that kind of stuff. We're just not staffed to do it. Just beyond parking, just to have an event that would be that big and have classes at the same time. I mean, kill the two maintenance guys on campus. So that's the kind of thing that we.
Well, and my thought around this was I was in charge of the event center at CMU when it opened. And everything that we said we weren't going to do, we did.
Well, we've got Rodney watching us.
So my point was
So-
simply enforcement.
Yeah.
And Rodney answered the question
Yeah.
of how is this going to be enforced? Obviously, another layer could be an internal policy.
Yeah, for sure.
Because then it doesn't get lost, and because the last thing we're going to have is the staff out checking to see if there's a major event
Yes.
going on other than commencement. Because I see all kinds of opportunities because of the size of the facility.
Yes.
It's smaller than CMU, but it's larger than the high school, and so there's
And that's
probably
what
going to be a
we're
lot of
really
interest.
excited about. Yeah, we hope that comes to it. I don't see that path right now, but if it comes to it, that's great, but we will not be doing it when college is open.
Well, whenever we become revenue starved,
Yeah.
we start compromising a lot of things. So I'm just saying from experience.
If you don't see it, the rest of us do, because we know that these events going on right now,
Yes.
we're desperate for space.
Yeah.
Because you and I talked.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And we've talked to CBB and all those places about this kind of stuff, so. Yeah,
Can I-
good question, thank you.
Can I ask a question related to, I was going to make a joke, but maybe I won't. This is a sewage question. So if you're limiting the use between the college activities
Yeah.
and the events,
Yep.
how does that play into the calculation of waste runoff into the sewer system?
I think that is a great question. It's one we'll be talking about tomorrow.
Okay.
I think that really is a very valid point as we think about capacity issues.
Yeah.
I think there are lots of numbers that tell lots of different stories that we can look at and talk about what real capacity is versus future capacity and needs of land that might get developed someday and might not get developed. All those things are things to talk about. That is a really good point, though. I think that is, as we think about total campus usage, and we recognize that when the event center is at its peak, nothing else is going to get flushed, then that, I think, helps the argument as well.
So,
Well, I guess my question would also be then, what is your highest use number of people versus your events number of people?
that's all
Are
in
those
that-
similar?
that's all in that evaluation. I will tell you that that's all been, as was mentioned, it took some time to review that study that was done. And it's because it's pretty complex. There are numbers, I'm sure Mr. Wenzel can rattle them off faster than I can, but essentially there's kind of peak average, you might say, flow, but there's also a term called peak instantaneous flow. And I want you to imagine during a halftime or during a break in that event with those 1,100 or however many people maybe in that building, when all the toilets are flushing at the exact same time, that's peak instantaneous. That's one of the areas where there are questions. But anyway, there's these various numbers, as was said, and that's all part of that discussion.
That was going to be it's related to what Jessica brought up. For events, obviously basketball, sporting events,
Yep.
possibly concerts.
It's not built for a concert. I mean, if you've ever tried to, how many of you have gone to a middle school band concert in a gym? It's not the best acoustics, not the best thing. It's not built for that. It's not an
Okay.
auditorium. It could do a speaker fairly well. Commencement will work well in it, a speaker, but we would not be able, not that some
Yeah.
student activity might try to put in bring in some garage band
Yeah.
or something, but it's not built for that.
But just for sporting events, are you going to sell alcohol?
No.
Okay.
No, we have a policy on campus that alcohol is not allowed on campus unless there's board approval. So a couple times a year, like our holiday party that we throw, we'll get a special approval from the board to have a party and have alcohol. But as a general policy, alcohol isn't allowed on campus.
Okay. Because that would certainly influence flush rates.
I hadn't thought about that, but sure. That's great. And now I want to know what your joke was. So if you feel
No,
like
I was trying to do a like backed up traffic joke
Oh,
with sewer, but I
I-
couldn't really get it
I
to
see
work
where that
out
was
very
going
well.
too. Okay.
Well, because I mean, honestly, you're doing this traffic analysis and it plays right into
Yeah.
the number of people
Just
at any given
capacity,
time, yeah.
Usage, yeah.
But we had this discussion several years ago with the complex of the renovation of the nursing home with the associated apartments, and the apartments couldn't be allowed because of the same situation where
Yeah.
the sewer simply didn't have capacity for the number of people.
Yep, it was the same thing, it was a pump station. In that case, that one was the oldest pump station in the township. But yes, it was exactly the same conversation, and as you said, ultimately, we had to let the applicant know they could not pursue the independent senior housing portion of their project.
At what point, I guess when thinking about the master plan and developing land and things like that, at what point does the township step in and make further developments of the sewer system? I mean, how do you do that in I guess that's a larger issue, but how do you do that in conjunction with plans that are coming in for building?
So our sewer system was designed based on our master plan and based on our existing zoning. And so that's what it's designed for. Of course, over time things change. We have some bottlenecks that are just natural in any system. And there are ongoing capital improvements to expand and update to this particular pump station. The well is large enough to have a larger capacity pump as we have additional flow. So the cost to upgrade to support this facility is not completely rebuilding the entire pump station. It's replacing only a portion of the equipment. But there's still a cost. Those are very expensive units. And most of the places in the township, we have had that circumstance where in the past things were built to allow some expansion. But in many cases, that expansion is taking place because of new uses, often new residential activities. So at least in this case, it's a relatively inexpensive upgrade, but it still has a cost to it. The pump station number one that was associated with Prestige Center, the assisted living facility, and the independent senior housing, that was a case where the existing pump station had been expanded and updated as much as it possibly could. And we were actually working on a new one at that point, but even the new one did not contemplate this particular activity because it wasn't zoned for it.
Okay. Any other questions from commissioners?
I'm going for it. I'm going to move to grant preliminary site plan approval for the proposed 39,161 square foot Mid-Michigan College Event Center facility at 2600 South Somerton Road, PID 14-013-40-001-05 in the southeast quarter of Section 13 and in the B4 General Business Zoning District, finding that the PRES PR 25-01 site plan dated May 27, 2025 fully complies with applicable zoning ordinance requirements for preliminary site plan approval, including sections 14.2.p required site plan information and 14.2.s standards for site plan approval.
I support that motion.
So the motion was made by Olver, was seconded by Brown to approve the preliminary site plan. Any further discussion? And again, the understanding is that the applicant will work with township staff to satisfy the remaining concerns, and if those can be satisfied, that it can be, the final approval can be administrative. If there's no further discussion, I'll have a roll call, please.
Shingles,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Daring,
Yes.
Olver,
Yes.
Lamp,
Yes.
McDonald,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Squadrito.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay,
Very much.
thank you. Okay, so we have one more business item. You'll recall that last month, we discussed the proposed City of Mount Pleasant master plan and some concerns that township staff had identified regarding it. All the local municipalities, including us, get an opportunity to comment on the proposed plan. And so, as per our instruction, they drafted this resolution, which is on pages 84 and 85 of your packet, and it lists the concerns that we had and that we discussed, and it has some alternative suggestions. So, is there anything you want to say about this, or?
The only thing I'll say is that I appreciate the checking of this. We did get some notes about typos before the meeting, so that's why you have an updated version at your table that took out the typos that was not in there. The goal here was to reflect the discussion we had last time, so you certainly can make changes to this resolution, additions, whatever you'd like to. This is your statement. But the goal was to try to match what we discussed last time in terms of what we shared with them.
Okay, thank you. So, as Rodney just said, this is our communication to the City of Mount Pleasant regarding their proposed master plan. And so, and as you can see, you're going to go on record as endorsing it or not endorsing it. And so we do want it to be appropriate and correct and complete. So if there are any other things that people have thought of in the intervening month, now would be the time to bring them up. Otherwise, if there aren't any, we would proceed to a vote on this resolution.
I don't have any changes that I'd like to recommend, but I was not present last month, but it does look like, from my understanding, everything looks like stuff that I would also agree with. I just have a question, a clarification for myself about the Part A, Bluegrass and Mission intersection. Am I to understand that the proposal that we're doing, asking them to make that roundabout at the old Mission Road, is that the one that's farther south, more towards the exit?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's the only question I had. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, the idea being that it shouldn't be as pedestrian-centered as the one at Broomfield or Mission and Bluegrass.
I'm sorry, one other question. Has there been, in the past, other recommendations from the township to the City of Mount Pleasant for their own master plans? I guess that's a question for Rodney.
So the last update was in 2020. It was taking place during COVID. The updated plan was available, but I don't recall that we made a specific comment on it. And it was largely because what they were doing had no real effect on us. Some of these items we talked about, like the extension of Broadway, was on that plan. But also I think COVID had an impact on our ability to communicate some of those things.
So do we have any idea how much weight our opinion carries for their own master plan, I guess is what I'm asking?
Certainly, the city and the township work cooperatively together on many things. We work with the city on projects like the Pathway project that the city's working on. We're contributing to. Part of it's in the township. that we've worked on previous pathway projects, for example. In one case, entirely in the city, on the south side of the CMU campus, but the township contributed to that project because it helped connecting to the township pathway. So we certainly work together. I think they're very interested in our views on these kinds of things.
Okay, thank you very much.
My perception is that the township and the city, their relationship today is less adversarial than it was, say, when I first moved to Mount Pleasant, more than 30 years ago.
It's interesting. Nobody commented. I was actually kind of hoping somebody would. In our report, we talked about history. If you notice the banners that are out here, we have 2 new banners of talking about Union Township history. We did that for a Isabella County Historical Society event, but we also did it so we could have some historical information here at the hall. And one of the interesting things because I did this research that I found, it completely surprised me, is that the township bought its first fire truck for the city's fire department in 1948. That's when the city and the township agreed to collaborate, and the township would fund a fire truck for the city's fire department, and the city's fire department would provide fire services to the township. 1948, we bought at least several trucks since then, but that was the first one, and there's information about it on those banners. So while there have been bad times, and times certainly where the city and the township have not gotten along, I think they've actually cooperated. There's a longer history of cooperation, you might think.
Will, is this something that we just mail to them, or will somebody from the township be there to maybe ask or answer any questions they may have?
It is convenient that on Friday, about once a month, we don't get every month, but about once a month, the city planner and I sit down together, just have a conversation on things, kind of things of mutual interest, whatever's going on. She lets me know what the city's doing, I don't know what the township's doing. Sometimes that has resulted in projects we've worked together on, like when the U.S. Census Bureau brought to our attention that the city and the township boundary didn't line up. There were conflicts in the boundary, and we were able to work together, myself and at that time City Planner Jacob Kane worked together to resolve that. So anyway, it happens this Friday. I have a meeting with Manuel Pavidenko, the city planner, and so I would be pleased if you do adopt this to hand it over to him. I think we'll even have it printed on nice heavy-duty paper, emboss it. But I will personally deliver it, so I can answer any questions you might have.
Sounds like it's due for timely approval then.
Okay. Well, it is due for timely approval because we have only a certain number of days, and I think that time ends, if I recall, the first week of July. So this really is the time. If we're going to provide some direction, this is the time to do it.
I did have one question again about the rerouting proposal for M20. You were not aware that they had any discussions with MDOT prior to this proposal, though?
Well, the city has been working with MDOT on Mission Street, so I don't know what, if any, discussion happened related to that,
Okay.
related to moving M20. But MDOT representatives have been at the table for their internal planning related to Mission Street.
Okay.
Were you talking about the Pickard issue on the railways?
Yeah. Well, the Pickard issue on the railways, but also the lack of any easements, basically, off the road.
Okay, well, this document, as you can see, it also has a space for a motion and a second. So opportunities to get one's name on the said document are
Does
there.
one have to read the whole thing out loud in order to get said credit, or can we say, so moved?
I'm going to say no. You don't have to read. One does not have to read the whole document.
What you might want to do, up at the top, it has the title of Resolution to Recommend Additional Revisions to Propose the Mount Pleasant Master Plan. If you could do something like, motion to adopt the resolution to recommend.
I move to adopt the resolution to recommend additional revisions to the proposed City of Mount Pleasant Master Plan.
I will
Support.
second that.
Everybody.
I defer to Stan
I'm
on
gonna show up with no Rotary t-shirts next week for everybody.
Okay, so the motion was made by Olver, and I think you had a motion earlier, so we'll give this motion to
defer to Shingles.
Commissioner Shingles, I think basically simultaneous for support by Shingles. Any further discussion? Okay, then roll call, please.
Hayes,
Aye.
Quadrito,
Aye.
Lapp,
Aye.
Olver,
Aye.
Daring,
Yes.
McDonald,
Yes.
Shingles,
Yes.
Brown.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. And so it looks like I'm supposed to sign it at the bottom, so once you tell me which copy you want to use, I will do that. But thank you very much for that. I think that's a good feedback to give them.
Actually, if you wouldn't mind, maybe sign two. That way we can give an original to them and we can keep an original for ourselves.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm going to print one out with all of that on there, and you can sign that.
But if you would, just
Yeah, I'll make it.
make two copies.
Okay, so if you're going to print it again,
Yeah,
and under the signature, my name under the signature line,
I corrected it already.
okay, 1L. Are you a 1L, Philip, too?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, they were originally 2 in this, so that was
Okay.
one of the corrections.
Not catch that.
All right. So we're almost at the end of our meeting here. We have extended public comment. If there's anybody in the public who would like to address any item, whether it was on tonight's agenda or not, they're invited to do so at this time. If you're in the room, come to the podium, give us your name and address for the minutes. If you're online in the waiting room, let us know, and we'll make arrangements for you to speak up. And we ask you to limit your comments to 5 minutes. Extended public comments open at 8:36.
No one's online.
Okay, no one's in the electronic room. Audience has departed. So we'll go ahead and close extended public comment until next month, also at 8:36. Next item is final board comment. Any comments from board members?
Thank you, Rodney, for the work you did on reviewing this master plan. Kind of bringing to attention some stuff that I think everybody in the board is in agreement with.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, it was very helpful to have those suggestions as opposed to just turning us loose to read it on our own. Any other comments?
I'd just like to harken back to what Commissioner McDonald was speaking about and the board reports. I've sort of been in the opposite side where neighbors are complaining to me because they know I'm on the planning commission about what other neighbors are doing. And so I've been in communication with township staff several times, just asking about clarification for zoning, clarification for ordinances, because we are all each other's neighbors, and what we do does impact each other, and sometimes people are happy with the answers, and sometimes they don't like what people are doing, so I just think it's been interesting for me to be in a position where I feel like I have to respond by asking for assistance from township staff to clarify rules and regulations just in, subdivisions.
We're happy to do that. So, the Open Meetings Act, your deliberations should happen in a public meeting. But you individually are welcome to contact staff and ask those questions anytime they come up in that way. Feel free to call us. We're happy to help you. We're happy to help the person that's talking to you as well, if they would like to make that connection. We can do that. But anyway, we certainly can help you get the answers you need.
Well, it's good for me too, because it forces me to really read the zoning. And
Yes,
you're saying too.
exactly.
And so we really go back and we learn the material much better because other people are asking us questions about it as well.
Okay. I guess I would suggest, or maybe I just throw out there, it might be useful for us to know at some point how often you have situations where somebody comes in with a proposed project that's residential that gets rejected or isn't ready to be just approved right away. Basically the issues. I'm curious how common they are. That's what I'm to get a feel for that. If it's a rare occurrence, it's one thing. Is it becoming more common? That sort of thing.
Well, I can certainly say, if you're interested, we can include this section as was suggested on an upcoming agenda and just have that discussion, and we'll provide that information for you.
Yeah. or even in the monthly report, or as a separate thing.
Yeah, if you're comfortable, we can certainly put it in the monthly report. So the answer to your question, though, is it is exceedingly uncommon that it reached the point that this particular one did for Mr. Pfeiffer, the applicant, where he actually received a denial and then had to respond to that. Ultimately, as I said, he did respond, plans were approved, he's got his permit. But that is exceedingly rare. In most cases, even if something, even if case there's where the first review or even because often we encourage people building a home, just as we do for developers, come talk to us early. We're happy to sit down and informally just look at a napkin sketch, look at pictures. This is what we're thinking. Will this work? At a very early stage where it's easy to make adjustments, and so we invite people to do that. And so most of the time those adjustments happen in that very early stage. That didn't happen here. It was really the applicant chose simply not to include those things that he talked about doing on the plans that they were ultimately submitted. That is exceedingly rare. I'm happy to give you specifics. We'll run the numbers on it and put it in our report.
Okay. Other comments from commissioners? Okay, if not, then enjoy the daylight that we have left. We're almost the longest day of the year. And we'll be adjourned until our July meeting.